Hello, everyone. So I'm going live here, probably for a very short video. And I'm going to, there's laundry in the backups. And I want to share my thoughts on the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files and how it relates to the current Saturn Neptune cycle, very soon to begin in Aries. And I just want to say first, I'll put in the description, there are two classes that I taught last year, lectures on the Saturn Neptune phase in Aries. Two full lectures, PDF slides, and an article I wrote speaking to both the collective unfolding and what I see happening on a personal level with this conjunction. So I'm offering all of that for free. You just sign up for my newsletter and you gain access to that. So I'll put that in the description below, and you can check out all of my other offerings as well. So I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think just getting live is a way for me to just get these ideas out right now. I definitely want to expand upon these thoughts more in the coming weeks. There's just so much to say. So first, let's understand that the Saturn-Neptune cycle in Aries is significant. It's not just the beginning of Aries. Saturn is so encompassing. It's culture, it's society, it's government, it's how we structure our lives as humans. It's what we idealize as valuable and successful. And Saturn in Aries in so many ways speaks to, it's like the archetype of the male, strong political leader or general, or, there's a very strong militant but structured and disciplined quality of masculine raw energy. But we know historically that Aries energy has not been in alignment, Saturn being alignment. So Aries on its most basic level, like without any kind of moral framework, without any sense of right and wrong, we all have an inner compass that tells us what's right and what's wrong. And when we do something out of alignment, most of us have an internal sense of, ooh, that doesn't feel right. So that's guilt. And that guilt tells us that wasn't right. We need to correct our behavior. And I think for all of us, majority of us, as we evolve and grow, we become more subtly aware of that sense of alignment. And so that's built in. In only extreme sociopathic situations do we have someone that is not in touch with that alignment. They're able to suppress it or disconnect from it entirely. And I think that's kind of hard for most of us to understand. If you think of the Saturn Capricorn square, this square, and squares are sort of like learning curves in general, like they invite really important and essential learning in life, all squares. So the natural zodiacal square between Capricorn and Aries speaks to the natural taming of our impulses. Like we learn, oh, don't just say or do that thing. You might feel it, but don't do it. Like, no, don't do that thing. Like, that's not right, We repress, even though we have a strong impulse or feeling in the moment. And we mature that and we develop, we grow that. And a part of the developmental process of Aries in general, which I would say is reflected in that square, is how we condition that raw, masculine, yang energy to be purposeful and directed, right? So we're doing something with it. Now, Aries is action. All actions have consequence, but it's creating a path in life. It's moving energy, and it's sort of setting the stage for the experience you want to have. It's not acting selfishly and recklessly just for its own purposes. I'll do whatever I want to do, and I don't care the effects. That's the extreme narcissistic reality of Aries when it's only thinking of what it wants and what it wants to get right now. It doesn't care about anyone or anything else. Again, most of us can't relate to that, but we can relate to the learning process of Aries in general and what it feels like to act out of alignment when we do things that don't feel right. Of course, Aries has a lot to do with sexual, pure, vital sexual energy. So in its most extreme case, we have Saturn in Aries. As per the nature of Saturn, which embodies that Capricorn energy, the way that society and culture celebrates success is in many ways. You can have a lot of people growing and rising the ranks of society, achieving various levels of social success and esteem and importance. But for them, to a significant degree, it's not really about doing the right thing. It's not about being in alignment. It's about appearing in alignment. Kind of like, I want to pass the test, and so I'm not going to cheat only because I know that I'm going to be caught. Ergo, if I wasn't going to be caught, I would cheat. Versus, whether I'm caught or not, I'm not going to cheat. That wouldn't feel right. Like I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I acted out of alignment. If I did, I would have to catch it and clean it up and kind of correct it, right? But many facets of celebrated culture and society and politicians, famous people, etc., in so many ways, it's like I don't have to look at my actions and my behaviors because I'm respected out there. And as long as Saturn's been externalized out there, the sense of I'm respected and people are looking at me in a certain way, then I feel like I'm a good person. It's a very interesting dimension of Saturn where the focus becomes more on the shell, on the appearance, but it's lacking in content. So one thing that Neptune does, as it is like the wave that just washes a sandcastle away, it reveals the illusion, the emptiness, the meaninglessness of all that we valued as a society and a culture, what we've considered to be successful, and how the immoral, unethical means would justify. And there's so many things to speak to. I mean, there are many nuances to the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, but that's a basic preliminary context. Now, speaking to the Epstein files, many of which were recently released, there are a few things that I want to speak to here. Naturally, a lot of male authority figures are brought forward. So I'm going to be speaking to the sample group of male authority figures and men in general, not because this is exclusively about men, but they are the sample group here that I'm going to use to represent that Aries masculine energy, that Saturn in Aries masculine energy and leadership and authority. That's an energetic that exists in everyone, and I'm going to be bringing this to everyone. And in order for there to be healing, we also need to be able to internalize these teachings beyond gender. Otherwise, we stay in this polarized, like, men are bad, I can't trust men kind of thing, right? And let's start there, because there are so many nuances here. Many men in authority have done bad things, either being involved in the crimes that Epstein also committed, or knowingly being in relationship with him, supporting him while they knew what he was doing, and all different layers, even if it's just behavior or speaking. To what degree can many men empathize with that? I think more than most men would feel safe admitting. But think about it. In society and culture, there are certain things that are normalized. You wouldn't talk about it publicly, but it's normalized. And I'm going to give two examples. One is the basic sexualization and objectification of women and female bodies. It's all over the place. Maybe socially or publicly, it would be disgraceful or untasteful or disrespectful for men to speak publicly, but many men amongst themselves would speak in very degrading ways. And again, going beyond gender, whoever you are, in what ways is it normal to do unethical, immoral things in action or in speech? But as long as society doesn't know about it, it's okay, right? That's a Saturn thing. It's like certain ways to behave are okay and not okay, but just don't do it in public, right? Like be unaligned, right? And the core issue is there has been a lack of leadership and role modelship for how to be in right relationship with that masculine Aries energy. There's been a lack of alignment, a lack of respect. What does it mean to carry this incredible life force? How to use it, how to engage it in a respectful and thoughtful and conscious way. In the lack of teaching and healthy leadership and role modelship, we have the other dimension here. Society sexualizes the youth. This is the other necessary revelation that I think comes with Neptune coming with Saturn and Aries. Youth, in particular, young women, are sexualized. But like all of the movies are young people at their sexual prime going through these. But it's like the meaning of life and the nuance of the journey and the wisdom happens not when you're 18 years old, much later. When we're that young, we don't know what the heck we're doing. And we make the most mistakes. And yet society doesn't regard that time as a time of mistake making and necessary learning and the need for guidance. It almost idealizes it as like, that's like the best time of your life at your prime, and your value decreases, especially if you're a woman, from that point on. There's a gross material sexualization of the youth. And I think this is something that we need to reconcile with, because with the lack of leadership and role modeling, we idealize the youth in a way that doesn't allow for a maturation and a right learning to occur. So follow me here, because there are many thoughts, and I'm going to always bring this back to the astrology, but I'm just going to flow with different dimensions, and it all connects back together. Coming back to this idea of, I think many men, can find some sense of resonance with many of the characters in the Epstein files. Again, not necessarily because they would do the same things, but there's sort of a subtext of, oh yeah, I know what it's like to be disrespectful towards the feminine. Simple as that. Again, things you wouldn't say out loud, but maybe it's normal to say it with your brothers, or maybe things you've done in the past. Now, we live in a day and age where there's a growing awareness of the misuse of that Saturn Aries energy. So there's more and more awareness of how in patriarchal culture for many, many years, centuries, there's been a misuse of that masculine authority energy to the degradation, rape, violence of women and children. As we're acknowledging that, there's both a sense of, a calling for many men to clean up their act, more safety for women to be heard and acknowledged, but at the same time, a whole lot of shame and fear. So this is an important piece here. When I've been scrolling Facebook, the majority of posts that I've seen about the Epstein files has actually come from women. And maybe this is just my sampling of social media following on Facebook, but my intuition is this is probably true in general. Saw a couple posts from men. In the one that I looked at, I didn't see any, except for mine, I didn't see any responses from men. Now, I'm not saying this to demonize men. Follow where I'm going. This is a very important point that, to me, really speaks to the larger picture. I sincerely think a lot of men don't know what to say or don't know what to do. It's because of the fact that there's actually a lot more psychological complexity for what it's like to be a man right now. A lot of men are afraid of being canceled, of saying the wrong thing. Because what do you do if you're a part of a group of society where there's been an immense amount of violence and misalignment from that group, and that you yourself have probably been a part of it in some way or another at some point? And it's hard to admit that. It's hard to say, oh yeah, when I was younger, I acted out of alignment. I've done things that aren't right. I feel horrible about that. I misused my sexual energy. That's scary. A lot of men would rather not say that, would rather not go public about it, because they will risk the possibility of their reputation being soiled, being canceled. That's mostly a thing to deal with privately with the individuals involved in a more safe container. But many men don't even get there because of the degree of shame and fear that's involved. So there's sort of like a deer in the headlight phenomenon that I think is really emerging right now, which speaks to the larger question around how there has been a gross misuse of that Aries, impulsive, vital, sexual energy, mostly from men. And most people in the Epstein files haven't and probably won't admit what they've done. That's my sense. Why? Because I'd rather not admit my wrongdoing and maintain my Saturn status and respectability. I'd rather say, no, this is not true, or you push it away, deny, and maintain the social status that I have, than to say I did something wrong and risk the possibility of losing my following, losing my respect, people not buying my books, being canceled from the documentary that they're making, all of the things that you got going in the world, losing that because you reveal that you simply are learning. The fear of revealing that we are learning and that we've made errors along the way is very permeating when it comes to that masculine impulse and that masculine energy. But it's a fact that we've been told many think of what it's like for many men. This is an important point that I want to bring forward here. A young man, which arguably is at the stage where they have the most sexual energy they'll ever have their entire life. Most young men, they're not socially important in the world. They don't have a lot of money. Unless you're like strong and tall and really attractive, you're not going to be of interest to many women. And yet, at that particular moment, young men have the most sexual energy and desire than they ever will their entire life, at that same time that they're actually in the most disadvantaged place in terms of their opportunities. Think about that for a moment. And what do we teach these young men? We teach these young men to be on top of their game, to make it. We don't teach them, you are a disciple, you are an apprentice, you are at a time of your life to apply yourself, to become the best version of yourself that you can become for you. We teach them to become something outside, like an external idea of success and importance, how to play the game, how to be all of these things, but we never allow them to grow. A subcontext to this whole Epstein files thing is that I think we need to say that's sort of revealed in the Saturn in Aries with Neptune is the way that male sexual energy is sort of developed and groomed and cultivated by society. In there being a lack of true mentorship and guidance and insight into what this energy is. Most men, as per the nature of Aries, will simply embrace whatever opportunity they have. Statistically, most men that cheat on their spouses, they do so because of opportunity. It's not necessarily because they're not satisfied in their existing. That's more of the immature Aries energy. It just wants to have an outlet for all of that energy. And when society says your sexual energy is wrong, inappropriate, bad, not okay, and you should not be doing something to cultivate it and give it an outlet and grow and develop and become the person that you're here to become, when we're simply not honoring this vital life force energy and respecting it and teaching how to embrace it in a good way, what do you do with it? Well, you do whatever you're able to do, but those doings will not be held or honored or respected in mainstream society publicly. That's why there are so many distorted, covert forms of exploring sexuality. Now you bring this again to men in status and positions of authority, something that's going to be very hard for a lot of people to admit. Many men, once they get to the point in their life when they have the opportunity, because they're wealthy or they have status now, right? So they have more sexual opportunity relative to what's been repressed, to what they never really developed or matured. They'll embrace that opportunity. Now, I'm going to be spending a lot of time looking at, well, not a lot of time. I want to at some point look at Jeffrey Epstein's chart. I think it's really fascinating to understand his psychology and what it reflects in the collective zeitgeist, honestly. But what he did and the way he sort of groomed other men, honestly, he built a sense of trust and brotherhood. And one of the most lowest common denominators for one man to appeal to another man is sexuality. And it takes a lot of ethical clarity, or maybe not a lot, just a ground of ethical clarity to say, hey, man, that's not right. Or, hey, don't talk about women that way. Or, hey, that woman is underage. Like, that's not cool. It's scary for a lot of men when confronted with inclusion, acceptance, and brotherhood and trust from another man who's giving, who's very generous to you. Epstein was known to be very generous and giving and friendly to people. Like, he built trust with people very quickly. That's like the theme throughout all of this. To be confrontational and say, no, that's wrong. That's scary. And a lot of men with power and status, they did not do that. And the ideal thing to do, the right thing to do would be to acknowledge, I should have said something. I shouldn't have condoned. I shouldn't have joined. And in worst case scenarios, I did something wrong. In worst case scenarios, it should be able to admit where one's actions were absolutely out of alignment. But the point that I'm trying to make here in bringing up the larger context of distorted male sexual energy and how it hasn't been developed or properly trained, when a man gets to that point in society where they have these opportunities, it's very easy, if there hasn't been a proper moral ground and framework, to just go along with things. And it's almost like, oh, well, it's separated from society. It's not a part of my life. As long as the world doesn't know about it, it's okay. It's moral. And it's highly distorted. But it's no different than any time any one of us has even had a thought about another person as a sexual object. It's a really hard thing to even consider, because I think on the other hand, we want to be seen as sexual objects. And a lot of women want to be seen as sexual beings because, well, I want to be regarded sexually. I want to be attractive. And many women are also trained, taught by society early on, your value is in your sexuality, opposite to men. When women are young, they're most valued by society. The older a woman gets, the lower their value goes. They're sexually less in their prime, whereas men become more in their prime in terms of their respectability and value. Women are more valued sexually when they're younger. And so society values young, again, Aries is the youth, Aries is young. Society values young women more than elderly women, more than women in their middle age. Who is a better sexual partner? Who is more wise, more mature, more clear, more responsive, more aware, more attuned, more balanced, more in touch with their inner being, more in touch with their feminine wisdom? Older women, not 18-year-olds or younger. But society idealizes young women. And this is a part of the whole distortion. So let me collect my thoughts and kind of see where I'm going with all of this. So I really think the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries, via the release of these Epstein files, is in many ways like a calling to look at what we've created as a society and how we, as men, as women, and again, this goes beyond whether you're male or female or any gender identity, how we've all been conditioned. And I use these genders as a subsample to reflect these larger archetypal dynamics. This deep conditioning around idealization of youth and sexual youth, and the repression of that masculine energy, and then the fear and the shaming that's also built in around that. How we respond to this is so important. And I'm not here to put pressure on men, because I think the thing that's scary is, when I say I'm not here to shame men, as I'm not here to give advice to anyone, but I think a part of what's going to be happening more and more, and I'm hoping that my voice can be a voice of compassion and an invitation for safety, because healing will happen as more men come to terms with the fact of them being on a learning journey. The fact that we have all sinned, the fact that we have not acted in alignment, the fact that there's reckoning and there's healing to do. Where we can remove shame and fear from the equation is where healing actually begins to happen. Which means for all of us, where we can regard people's human process and not demonize one another, to keep the doors open. A big Saturn Neptune teaching is there's no sinner without a future, and there's no saint without a past. And I think the disillusionment of many of these political and social and well-known figures makes that really evident. No one should be idealized. No one should be put on a pedestal, ever. And the question is, what do we do when we've made mistakes? Keep the doors open for all of these people that have done something wrong. We keep that door open for their correction. And we let them walk their journey, but we don't have to give our indiscriminate trust and faith to them. So there's a big realignment on who are the role models, what are the authority figures, what is the way that we structure society. Now, of course, on a much larger level, we have the governments, the countries, and how war is normalized. Like, you can be a total war criminal ruling a country, but like get on an airplane and have a civil conversation with another president. Like, there's a sort of normalization of violence that's celebrated amongst those in power and authority. That's ending. There's a sort of ground of, this is not how we're here to live. The micro and the macro, my friend, it's both disillusioning to see how deeply embedded in global culture and global elite culture the whole pedophile ring has been. And it's Neptune's transcendent. So it's not Democratic, it's not Republican, it's everyone. And it's everyone that's trying to preserve the illusion, Neptune, of their power and status and authority and importance. But this dissolves that, and it really brings it back to truly on a personal level, what is the ground of morality that we choose to live? What kind of world do we want to live in? What kind of country do we want to live in? Who do we want to be? And Saturn Neptune will inevitably bring up the question of, when faced with it, will we do the right thing? Right? The question of like, what is the right thing is sort of what comes with Saturn Neptune. The Saturn dimension is, well, I'll do whatever is normal, what's legal. But what's legal isn't always what's right. I'll do what my government tells me. Well, what the government says isn't always right. I'll believe what this politician says, but that's not always true. So there's a very nuanced reality of dissolving all of the false illusion forms of Saturn rightness and getting into Neptune. Neptune is the truth. Love is real. Unity is real. There's a deeper principle of truth that does not want to violate or create any kind of separation. So it brings up, what are the deeper ground and structures and principles upon which we live as a society, in our local communities, in our families, in our cultures, and largely in the world. These are big questions that are beginning to emerge right now. And I guess that's what I have to say. I mean, these are just like some preliminary thoughts that aren't, I hope this was cohesive enough. Speaking to how the Epstein files speaks to the larger unfolding in the collective, we're just getting started. And naturally, it's going to bring up anger. It's going to bring up a lot of confusing emotions and feelings, and that has to happen. This is a part of the disillusionment of how incredibly corrupt our society has been built upon. I honestly think, from a Neptunian point of view, we've mostly collectively had a blind eye to the corruption. It's like, we know it's corrupt. We just never really asked the deeper questions. And because we didn't ask those questions, there's been a sort of normalization of just like, people do what they do. And as long as you don't find out, it's all fine. There's a breakdown, and this is, accentuated with a sextile to Pluto and Aquarius, and even the sextile to Uranus and Gemini. I mean, we're in a cycle where I really think the next 5-7 years does represent a profound breakdown and a gradual beginning of something new. It has to be. It has to be. And it doesn't come from the outside Saturn dimension of our political leaders, because we can't trust in them. We can't just give anyone power and put them on a pedestal and elect them and think that they're going to do the right thing. It doesn't work that way. So it has to come from within. And that statement, has to come from within, feels so abstract. Let me just take a minute with that. It's easy to stand on the pedestal and do the right thing. And that's why I think like the doing the right thing is a personal thing where we're each personally guided. That inner compass says, do this, say no to that, go here, stand up for this. Please, everyone, don't create more shame and violence by holding the standard of, you should be saying this or doing this, or because you're a man, you should say something, or because you are a politician. You walk your path, and your path might be to say those things if that's your guidance. I mean, honestly, I just want to bring that awareness of where we can become morally outraged by how mom and dad aren't doing the right thing for us, right? We have to be that mom and dad figure, and also depend on a deeper mom, dad, our source, our creator. There's a deeper truth that's always there, unmoving, in the context, in the midst of all of the illusions and insanity that we have as humans have created. So following our own inner compass means we're going to do the right thing as we're guided. That's the leadership of Aries, even if it makes us stand apart. I think there's a great zeitgeist happening right now that as we each perform our own collective, our own personal actions, there's a collective momentum with these strong Aquarian, Uranian energies this year that you really can't predict. We can't predict where this is going, but I think it comes from a deep sense of enough. I want something different. I want to live in a different way. And such a big part of the evolutionary journey relative to Saturn is a cleanup act. So you can say there's a developmental process with Saturn that says, like, you make mistakes, you act out of alignment, you don't do the right thing, and there's that natural guilt that you feel as a result of that. And you clean up. You do better next time. And then you don't learn the same lesson twice. Why would you learn a lesson twice if you learned it? You can only learn a lesson once, literally, right? Think about that. Like, you can't. So karmically, we don't repeat lessons. We only repeat what we haven't learned. And so there's an opportunity in this transit to learn something that personally and collectively, perhaps we haven't gotten. I think the deepest empowerment is, where am I called to claim a deeper power and strength right now that I haven't otherwise known? That's so much greater than the illusion and the deception and the corruption that's all around. It can feel like we're swimming in an ocean of corruption right now, but it's just the Neptunian dimension revealing and bringing it forward. It's on its way out. These things never last forever. Okay, so let me drop in, see if there's any more to say. Again, check out the description. I'm going to post in a moment a link to sign up to my newsletter, and you'll get a free access to 2 lectures I've given both last year at different points on Saturn Neptune, speaking to the collective and the personal, their PDF slides, and also an article and a transcript as well. So you can read it, you can watch it, and a whole article that I wrote on this as well. So a lot of different thoughts and reflections that I've kind of put out there. I'm just making it available if you sign up for my newsletter. I also have a class coming up this weekend, next Saturday, on the lunar nodes. It'll be a very nuanced class talking about the lunar nodes through the 12 sign polarities. You can join that class. If you join my school living library, you can also get that class for free. My school library gives you access to my entire school curriculum, unlocked and released monthly. You get a new series of lessons every month, but progressively access to my entire library, and all free classes. All upcoming classes are free as well. So all of that in the description below. So let's just tune in here for one moment, because there's one more piece. Maybe I can look at comments, see if there are any questions. When did the stream start? According to me, 31 minutes ago. So you'll be able to go back here. Okay. When humans awaken to the truth, we don't need politicians to create healthy communities. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the inevitable, my friends. This is absolutely where things are going. Yeah. Okay, let me just drop in for a moment here. Yeah, so I'm called to say something about Jeffrey Epstein's chart. Do I want to share it right now? Maybe briefly. Where's the chart right here? Yeah. So what I find really interesting about his chart is he natally actually has a Saturn Neptune conjunction. Interesting, right? It's in Libra. So he was born 2 cycles ago, right? The last time it happened was in Capricorn, 89-90. And I'm going to be having a talk with my friend Diana, talking about the Saturn Neptune cycle in regards to history of Palestine and what's happening now relative to the larger history. She has a whole talk on even like the 1700s and Neptune, Saturn, and Aries. Fascinating conversation. So stay tuned for that. But before 89-90, the last time that they were together was in Libra in the 50s, right? So this is 2 full Saturn Neptune cycles ago was when he was born. There's a lot to say about his chart. And maybe I'll use his chart as an example this weekend when I talk about the lunar nodes. He would be a good Leo example, not to demonize Leo, but he would be a great Leo example. One quality, this is the point, the nodes are very multifaceted. So Leo can look many ways, and I'm definitely going to be bringing out the dark side of Leo. So I want to speak a little bit to this, because this reveals to me a lot of what's happening in the collective, what it's revealing. So Saturn Neptune in the 11th is like gaining status and friendship with the upper echelon. 11th house being like upper echelon. Saturn in the 11th is like the elite in society, right? And Neptune and Libra, very friendly. He had this way of being able to, like, typically Neptune in the 11th is like anyone can be your friend. That can be a very beautiful humanitarian consciousness, like a very globalized consciousness, or like Pisces, like a very Fred Rogers kind of vibe, right? But this is like the distorted, manipulative side of Libra. He was able to make friends with the upper echelon, the elite, anyone in society, and build a sense of kinship and friendship. And the way that he grew in ranks and kind of got higher and higher was through his ability to sort of duplicitly build trust and relationship, all built on a lie. He's like a fundamental absolute, like, sociopathic, total liar. We see that this squares Uranus in Cancer in the 8th. Of course, a lot of the darker elements are strongly expressed here, like the whole Capricorn in the 2nd being the patriarchal entitlement for self-pleasure, self-indulgence. Like, I'll do whatever I want to do. Grooming of youth and groups of people that are secretly abusing and violating the feminine, Cancer, women, children. And sort of the secrecy of that 8th house to 11th house with elite groups of people that are globally and worldwide. He built something, and this is the point that I want to make. He built something that tapped into the elite, the highest class globally around the world. And he was able to hold it together so well because he brought in the elite and was able to kind of tap into a collective shadow and use that to protect and maintain his secrecy. And he didn't even try hard. And even when he was a known sex offender, he still had many years of being supported and sort of upheld and protected by the elite. And so seeing that Neptune Saturn in his chart, just to me reveals a little more nuance for what we're looking at here with Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. You know, this is if we watch any interview with him, it's very charming. It has a very good way of making you feel, making him likable, right? Look at any of the emails. It's very much like, you know, one of the best ways to make someone like you is to ask them for advice. And he was well known to ask expert people advice in their fields, and then to do them favors, to like give them gifts, help them. You feel listened to, you feel respected, you feel seen. That was his trick. So we have 2 cycles later, this happening now in Aries. And it's like, it just revealing the active corruption that was set in motion. And just like bringing up another layer of the illusion, of the deception, of the lies that had been evident. I'm not sure where my thoughts are going with this, but anyway, there's something meaningful about seeing this 2 cycles later with Neptune and Saturn in Aries. All right, my friend. Yeah, any questions or comments, feel free to type them in, and I'm just going to see what else is here. All right. Yeah, thank you for joining me. And again, I'm looking forward to sharing more conversations, more talks about this. By the way, I don't know if you know, but I have a membership program on my website now, so on my YouTube. So if you become a member, I mean, basically people ask me questions in my comments, and I try to read all of my comments. I don't always have a chance to read the longer ones, but I've created a mechanism that if you want me to answer a question for you, I could even make a whole video designated to particular topics, which is fun for me. But you becoming a member of my channel is a way of supporting me. And it also assures that I'll see your question and that I'll definitely give it attention. Just not personal astrology charts, but if you want to like ask a question, it'll definitely be seen by me. And then I'll for sure be able to respond to it and make a video with different questions or Q&As every month or however often it makes sense to make these videos. So yeah, that support is really appreciated, and it's fun. Just I love it when I get questions and how it challenges me to kind of reflect and be more thoughtful. A lot of times the questions that I get in the comments prompt thought processes and new videos, whether you know it or not. So it means a lot to me, your engagement and your feedback and the questions. When you really engage with the content and ask thoughtful questions, it's exciting for me and brings forward more content. All right, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Again, check out everything in the description, including free access to all of my Neptune Saturn talks and all the things that I got going on. Bye for now.